That's our intro music via Riley. Welcome back to another exciting After Effects tutorial. Last week, we were playing around with our short film Deja Vu, making Meredith explode and making fieriness come out of the end of this gun. We're kind of using Video Copilot plugin stuff for this. We've got the Shockwaves assets, and then we've got color vibrance, and we've got VC reflect, and we've got yeah, we should use VC reflect on that on the floor back there, shouldn't we? You make that look legit. So we're using a bunch of Video Copilot plugins. We're just kind of working this shot forward slowly but surely, trying to get as much done in a few hours as we possibly can. This is still in its kind of rough format. This is a little bit more what this scene actually looks like right here. So we made her explode a couple weeks ago, and again, this is just the rough version. This is like making her explode in like a couple of hours. So there's still a lot more work left to do yet on this to make it look a little bit more legit, like getting better assets for the blood on the walls and adding some smoke and sparks and all that other good stuff so that it looks a little bit more lively when we do this. All right, so that being said, today what we're going to do is we're going to play with we want to fill this section in right here where we kind of see this laser blast come down the hallway and hit the other Meredith. In this like 6, 7, 8 frames right here. So we're gonna use Saber for that, and the whole kind of like idea behind this is that we've got kind of almost like a instantaneous laser bolt type of thing that flies across the room in like 1 or 2 frames and then leaves this kind of contrail behind it in the air. And then I think we should definitely work on creating some realistic reflections and things like that on the floor so that people don't look at it and go, oh, it's not real, there's no reflection on the floor, the walls, or anything, you suck, your effects are terrible. Yeah, we're doing the best we can with the time we have here, folks, so let's sally forth, as we say. So one of the things that you're going to have to do if you are going to do this tutorial is you need to install said plugins, and my class has already done that. We've got the Saber plugin, we've got VC Color Reflect, and VC Color Violence. I wish they had that plugin. And then we've got VC Reflect as well. Color Violence. I'm just going to call this Color Violence from now on. I think it's more fun. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start taking a bunch of these plugins and working these, doing whatever we can to kind of like build this up and make it look cool. All right. So for this effect, we've kind of got this compartmentalized into 3 different shots. So we have Meredith firing the gun as one of them. And you move up a composition and you've got the Meredith firing the gun front, and then you've got the composite, which is a couple of different files. So we have our Shockwaves, which we've added into the shot, and then we have 2 shots which are masked together. So you've got Meredith on the left here, and then you've got Meredith on the right over here. Those are composited together with the Shockwaves added in. Again, this is primarily where we're going to be working today, and then we move that up the chain one more time, and we've got our 3 shots all comped together with a laser bolt composition right there, which is probably going to go away because we're going to work on that here. And this is kind of the final timing of the sequence is right there. All right, so what we're going to be working on. Here we go. We're going to be working on this like 7 frame bit right here. And you can see we've already got Saber laid in here with a little mask. So the way that Saber works is you have to have a layer and you have to have a mask on said layer, and then you have to drop Saber on that layer. And we can... Let's see, what do we want to do here? I haven't played with this very much, so I'm gonna figure out how this works, I guess. All right. problem was I dropped it on a black layer solid, and Saber wants a white layer solid to work off of. So that's what I did. I took Saber and dropped it on a white layer solid. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start customizing this bad boy. So I want the Saber to kind of stretch from where Meredith's firing up to where the other Meredith is getting hit. And then what I want to do is I want to start animating this thing so that it kind of moves across the screen really quickly. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to be doing that with the well, let's play with some settings first. So we've got our core size right now. To make that bigger or smaller, that was set to 3, right? I kind of like 3, looks good. Let's play with some presets too, just to see what some stuff looks like. Hot, heat. Let's see what some of these things look like. That kind of has a cool look to it. If we like change the color to match our blue color that's going on in the shot, that's pretty sweet looking. We can probably make the core size a little smaller. Nope, too small. Nope, still too small. Let's make that core size 1 so that it actually has some glow to it. And what else should we do? Let's see. Let's come in here and go to customize core. So I believe this is where you can kind of set the sizes. So like if you want your Saber to be bigger at one end and smaller at the other, you can do that. So that's kind of what I want to do. I want it to make it look like there's some perspective with this thing. So I'm going to decrease the start size. We'll go down, say 50%. Oh, that's the start. Okay, which is the start and which is the end? Okay, that's core start. So let's flip this around so that the start is actually at the barrel of the gun and the finish is where we want it to finish. So it looks to me like we're going to have to go a little bigger with our core size. So there we go. I set the core size to 2, and now we've got a kind of a nice decreasing or increasing scale of this thing. So let's see. I want to play around with this a little bit more. So end size I'm going to increase a little bit. Since this is only 7 frames long, I really want this effect to have some punch to it. So we go there. I'm going to decrease the start size just a little bit. Let's see if we can't make this look a little bit more perspective-y. I don't want to lose the core down there though, so I'm going to kind of go bit by bit until it's just about where I want it, and that looks like it is about it right there. Sweet. So the cool thing about this is you can also do these offsets, right? So you can have your you can basically have you like power your animation with these offsets, right? So like if I animate the end offset and set it to 0, and since she's already fired, it probably shouldn't be at 0. So we'll start it at like, let's try 15%. And I set a keyframe too, FYI. So here's the keyframe right here. We're only going to need the effect on these layers. So we've got the keyframe set right there at 15%. And we'll probably go in and start playing with a whole bunch of these sizes too. We're going to keep it there for now. So we basically want the bolt to get there in just a couple of frames. I want this to be violent and fast, right? So we want the effect to get there really quickly. I'm going to have it go from 15 to 100% in just a couple frames, and this is what that looks like.
You thinking like 5 or 6?
5 or 6 what?
Frames.
I'm going to have it get there in like 2, and then I'm going to have it shrink back down in 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the end. You know what'd be really cool is if we made this go through her body, like it just vaporizes a hole right through her. Like it comes out the other side too. Of course, then we'd have to roto. You guys good with that? We've done a lot of roto in this class, so I was trying to do a project that would not have too much roto in it. All right, so I'm going to have it go, I'm basically doing 4 frames, Adam. So I have it go to 100% in 2, and then go in 2 more frames, I'm going to have the start offset then change. So I'm going to animate these 2 offsets. So now I've got end offset and start offset. And I'm going to have the start offset go from... So this is what it kind of looks like now. And we might be able to stretch that end offset a little bit. I think this would be so much cooler if it actually just blasted right through her. Yeah, see, that's sick. Like, you roto around her, like, body shape right there and have it, like, punch through her back. It's gonna look ridiculous. Boom. All right, so that's kind of what I've got for this effect right here. There's some roto work that we're going to have to do to make this actually work because we've got it going right over her body and we need it to actually hit her and go through her. But so far, I mean, that looks pretty good right there. And then we go in, we do the rough roto work. And it honestly, we don't need to do. We need to do a little bit of motion tracking on her back to get the hold. Like, I almost want this to come a little earlier.
I already navigated this. I think I had to like line up. It looks like shit.
With Saber.
Yeah, I'm using like the core start now.
Oh, back to the task at hand. So we've kind of got our Saber initially animated, which it's looking pretty good, and I really just want this to just tear right through Meredith right there. And that is basically our shot. So let's just see how this is looking. So I kind of feel like the other thing that we could do here is we could set, like, let's take our Saber that we've already made and duplicate it and then scoot this over to the left a little bit. And let's take the Saber plugin here and add just a little bit here of it coming out of the gun. It's going to be really subtle and it's only up for a couple frames, but I think it will it'll help sell the effect. So I'm going to click on Saber here, and then I'm going to, so depending on how you guys have your project set up, it may be a little different than mine. Like, I know, Charles, you got yours set up a little different than mine. I've kind of got, like, I've been kind of like taking the shot from before and adding it into the comp that it's leading into so that I have some sort of reference and I can see how things are coming together as the shots progress. And then I take that and then move it up again, which is why we've got 3 different pre-comps. So we've got this pre-comp with her firing, this is honestly where we should do the Saber plugin. But that in turn then leads up to this, where we see that pre-comp, and then we see the Saber fire here, and then that goes into the final comp, which will go into the project, where the whole thing's cut together. So just depending on how you like to structure stuff, you can do it differently than me if you want to. You can make each shot completely individual and compartmentalized from the other shot if you want to. If you want to do what I'm doing, where you have a reference so you can see what things are supposed to look like and how the timing's coming together, then you can do it that way too. There's a million ways to skin the After Effects cat. All right, so again, we've got this Saber plugin, and now we're going to kind of like change the core end and start areas. So I'm going to have the core end here, or the core start. The core end is going to be off camera. The core start is going to be kind of right over here. And then, I mean, we really only need this to be up for like a couple frames. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the plugin. I'm going to set this back to heat. I'm going to make sure that we've got the proper color. Let's see. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to copy the color hex code from here, and I'm going to add that color hex code in over here so that it's got the proper color on it. And then I'm going to take the end and put it where I need the end to be, which is going to be like right there. Wait, did I say end? Yes, I want the end to be over here, and the start to be right there at the barrel of the gun. So one thing that we could do here is we could kind of do a little bit of pre-fire work. So you see the explosion go bing like that. So we could add a couple frames at the front where the saber is like really thick, like it's almost like a circle and it hasn't moved yet. So we've got like one frame before like all the crazy visuals start coming out of there. So let's take, I'm gonna just get rid of these offsets. Set these both to 100. I think they should both, there we go. Start offsets to 100. Perfect. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start playing around with the thicknesses and the settings on this little bit here to make this kind of start to pop a little bit. So what I'm thinking here is we set, I'm taking the end offset or the start offset, and I'm gonna pull the start offset down, and I barely want it to start showing right there. And what I want to do is I want this to kind of like charge a little bit before the huge lighting effect hits right here. So I want a couple frames. I'm gonna go 3 frames of like light starting to come from the barrel a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna increase the core size quite a bit. Maybe I'll animate that. So I think their core size was set to like 1. So I'm gonna go core size, set a keyframe, and I'm gonna make the core size just huge. See what, yeah, there we go. So I want it to kind of rise to that. So I'm gonna go couple 2, 3, and then boom. So I'm gonna set the 3rd keyframe, the core is gonna be really big like that. And then I'm gonna go back to this beginning part, and I'm gonna go core size 1. And then let's just watch this real time to see what it looks like. Of course, we need to shut Saber off so that it's not overlapping into our next shot. That's kind of cool. Okay, sweet. So, and then we can follow that up a little bit. So core size gets really huge. And then we can start the offset. Maybe we'll go back 1 frame and start animating the offset as well. So I'm clicking on these layers and pushing U, by the way, to get it so that oh, it's just taking its sweet time rendering it. Okay, cool. Let's just set this to like 50. I want to kind of see it start to crawl a little bit and maybe grow in size even larger. I think I'm going to set the core size to like 100 right here, make it really huge. There we go. So we've got kind of this little bit of light coming from this right here, and we can do some other fun stuff, like we could add a lens flare over the top of that to help sell it a little bit more, like it's starting to light. We could add a little bit of like, we could almost add like a barrel effect, like it's lighting inside the barrel. Again, a lot of this stuff is just going to be rough. Like you're going to want to go in and just really work these effects to get them to look as realistic as you can, like adding sparks, adding smoke, adding lighting effects, things like that to help sell it. Yeah, and this is it's looking pretty good here. I'm just adjusting some timing, and if we watch this real time, you can see it just adds a little bit of interest to this. I think the other thing we need to do is we probably need to blur it out a little bit. Like all of our shockwave effects have some pretty heavy blurring on them, and the gun is totally out of focus. So if you have something as out of focus as that gun barrel is, you want your assets to be out of focus as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a blur to this. I'm going to add what do I want to add? I just want a fast blur. I don't need anything super amazing looking. So fast box blur is going to work for this. We'll go ahead and dump that on the Saber, and then we will blur this thing out pretty significantly. I'm gonna go like 25 pixel blur, and we're gonna just watch this. You know, and maybe, you know what might be kind of fun is to animate the glow color. So like if maybe it starts out a little more orange. So to animate the glow color, you just click on the keyframe next to glow color, and then I'm gonna scoot the glow color over a little bit, and I'm gonna have this animate from like orange, like a dark orange, maybe even darker than that, kind of like so. That looks kind of cool. Let's see what this looks like now. You guys hear that?
Yeah, what is that?
So I push the play button, and I hear crackling from the projector.
I thought it was someone on their keyboard going back.
Is that audio coming through? What is going on with that? It's not. It's just the projector being weird. All right, cool. All right, well, totally sidetracked. All right, so now we've got a little bit of interest here. One other thing we might want to do is just kind of like get in here and do a little bit of position work on where the gun barrel actually would be. So just to make sure that this kind of follows the movement of the gun barrel, I'm going to go ahead and animate my core start. And I'm just going to kind of go frame by frame and see where this needs to be. So it looks like it moves over just a hair right there. And then it dips down just a hair. And then it fires off from there. Yep, that's good. So it's got a little bit of movement to it with the gun, because that's what it would be like. Cool. All right, so now let's play around with this a little bit more. So yeah, go ahead, Adam.
My first.
Got pretty good looking movement here on the gun barrel. You can see it's following kind of the edge of the gun as she fires. And then, so one of the things that we were talking about doing is having this kind of leave a trail behind it, right? And I think what we can do is we can take our Saber plugin and we can use the Saber plugin to kind of do this for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the Saber plugin that we already have, right? And then it won't last for long. It's going to be these frames, these few frames where you can see space there behind the trail. And then what we want to do is we just kind of want to offset this thing so that so that these two things follow each other. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to change this to mist, and I'm just going to solo this so I can see what it looks like. So this is what the mist one looks like. And I think what I'm going to do is increase the core size pretty big. And then decrease the core intensity and try to make this like more. Okay, that's not gonna work. Let's call this 100. I'm gonna play with some of these presets real quick and see if there's any kind of cool green energy. Ooh. Torch. Kind of trying to, ooh, soft smoke. Here we go. All right. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take soft smoke, and then I'm going to make this kind of a neutral, like a darker gray color. Here we go. Something like so. So the glow intensity is pretty high. The core size is pretty low. And this is kind of getting where we want to be. I'm going to unsolo this so I can see what it looks like. And now what we want to do is just offset this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this layer that we made with the smoke, and I'm just going to offset it a little bit. So like you see the thing come and then it's like a trail of smoke following it. But the thing I want to have be different here is I don't want the start offset to change. So I'm going to delete the keyframes for the start offset so that this thing comes on the screen and just kind of stays there for a few frames. And actually it's pretty bright. So I think the other thing that I'm going to do is have this, we definitely need the sizes of these to be animated. So that is the core start. I want the start size to be a lot smaller. I'm going to go down to like 15%. There we go. And then the end size, I'm going to make it a little smaller too, so that it kind of leaves this trail through the air. And then I'm trying to think if I want to, I really want this to like, yeah, basically look like it's following the laser blast. I want to see this in real time so I can kind of judge it a little bit better. That's so weird. Cool, that looks pretty good. And it's like you can be really nitpicky on this stuff. Looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. Okay, cool. Yeah, it kind of just leaves that trail. All right, so now the next unfun part that we have to do is we have to make a copy of Meredith for 7 frames and roto her so that this passes kind of through her body. So I think what I want to do is I kind of want to take, I just want to roto like the arm and then to the back, like right here, so that it's basically going to like hit her right directly in the chest, and then it's going to come out the back of her. And so when we roto this, we kind of need to roto it so that like we have the emergence of the laser kind of coming through the small of her back here, and then we roto everything here. The arm needs to get rotoed probably all the way up to the shoulder. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to take Bad Meredith Dies, which is that layer right there. I'm going to duplicate said layer, and I'm going to scoot that up above the shockwave, or above the saber layers. And you can see where we've got the mask happening right there. So what I can do right now is I can get rid of this mask because I don't need it. And now we have the unfun roto work to do. So I'm going to start with just the arm. I'm actually just going to start with the upper arm. And to speed this process up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here, and I'm basically just going to go from the shoulder down. And this is a very soft selection, so you kind of can be pretty, you just want to get it like close. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, but I'm basically going to go to the shoulder, from the shoulder kind of to where her arm ends down here. And I'm going to kind of select like right in the middle of the defocused area, maybe just a little bit inside, so that when we defocus the mask, it looks right. And I'm going to try to use as few keyframes as possible. So there we go. We've got our mask. It's now cutting through her arm, which is working well. And then we're going to defocus that a little bit, which we just did. That looks pretty good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start animating this thing. So we're going to take Bad Meredith dies and her arm, and I'm gonna cut this video off where I don't need it. We only really need it until the laser passes through her, and so here's where we're starting. It looks like I started on a different frame, so we're gonna start right there, and now we want to do our mask path. And what I'm gonna kind of do is I'm gonna go where does this start and where does it end? I guess I'm just gonna kind of go frame by frame here because it's only 7 or 8 frames long, and so we're just gonna adjust our frames accordingly. This part of the arm up here doesn't really matter too much. And so I'm just gonna get in here and just roughly lay out where I want this mask to be. And again, close will be good enough on this stuff. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. There we go. Looks pretty good. And again, I'm going to come in here and do the bottom part of her arms separately, and I'm just going to go frame by frame here. Super fun to do frame by frame rotoscoping. I'm going to shut my mask off so that I can set the mask animation and I don't have to worry about seeing all the crazy effects coming through the background. And we're just going to come in here, adjust keyframes, and power through this until it's looking good. And I'm going to pause the tutorial and get through this rotoscoping so that we can get to a final product. So we took our time, we rotoscoped all the way around all of Meredith's arms and torso so that she has the laser blast blasting right through her body right now, which looks pretty good. And the shot does cut off right here, so everything after this we don't use. So now we have, now we got to do a little more timing work, I think. I feel like I want this blast to move a little bit quicker. So I'm going to change my start and end offsets a little bit. There we go. So I'm having it start a little more on screen. And I'm going to have the end offset a little quicker here too. Maybe a frame quicker so that it's not cutting through her back as she's moving way back like that. Might even try. Pew. Boom. Yeah, that's the stuff right there. And then I think what I'm going to do with the smoke is alter this a little bit so that it doesn't move along the entire length of the laser. I almost want it to just be like a trail on the end of it, so I'm going to change the end offset here a little bit. So that we really only see the smoke before or after. And I want the smoke to like draw on too. It's almost like it's coming on. Cool. You bet, dude. Now we've got her all rotoed. The laser's looking pretty good. I made some changes to the smoke and the animation so that it happens a little bit quicker. So it's a bing, and it just plows right through right there. And then I'm just making some adjustments here. I kind of want, yeah, boom, and then that happens. I almost want something cool to happen with this smoke, like the start endpoint or the start offsets change or something.
Feather these masks, like especially the back one.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feathered everything with like 30 with a 30 pixel feather. So with the back one, what I'm gonna do, Adam, is I'm gonna start adding in some additional elements. Like I'm probably gonna come in here and add some sparks and stuff. So like we've got all the Copilot assets. So let's see. Let's see what Rampant's got real quick. Film and light effects. They've got flashes. Oh, this is not what I want. Visual effects. So they've got fire, dust, sparks, and embers and stuff. So like stuff like this. This is not good. This is dust. Sparks. I want sparks. I want better sparks. That might work. Like the tail end of it, where it just spits a little bit. So we've got some of those things, and then we've got a whole bunch of Video Copilot stuff too. So in Action Essentials, they've got dirt charges and stuff. Like this could work really well for. Some of these could work really well for. I'm gonna open these up in Bridge and see if I can actually see them. Do they not have Bridge installed? Gosh darn it. People like me. Okay, cool. I'm just going to bring the whole doggone thing into After Effects and add it to the project. So I'm going to pull in dirt charges. Oh, boo. Really don't like that you can't preview these. It's kind of a bummer. Dirt charges, we're going to bring all those in. Now we can look at them. So what could be really cool to do with these is to like utilize them in 3D space. I think they're on alpha. Yes, they are. And then maybe make them like blood effects. So like this is actually a really great dirt charge. I'm going to pull this in and see what it looks like. So if I bring this in and dump this on the very top and then take it and rotate it. Actually, I'm going to put this in 3D space so that we can play with the perspective a little bit. So I'm going to rotate this left and then bring this over here. And then I'm going to do a little bit of masking on it. Kind of get this to blend a little better. And then I'm going to invert that mask and feather it just ever so slightly. And then let's go ahead and see where this begins. It kind of begins right there. So as soon as this hits like there, boom, that's where I want this dirt charge to hit. And then instead of it being a dirt charge, what I'm going to do is colorize it so that it looks like blood instead. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of track its position, track it a little bit and rotate it a little bit. So it's kind of, I'm going to rotate it towards camera a hair. Oops. Just moving this a little bit and then that actually looks really good. So then we kind of want to move that with her body a little bit because she's moving. I mean, the charges are moving too. This is going to be a really, really subtle movement. Position, change it, and then I'm just going to kind of like move this way ever so slightly and down.
You just grab that from Video Copilot.
Yep. And then what I'm going to do with this is because this is so fast, remember we're looking at this frame by frame. Because this is so quick, I mean, there's sometimes you just don't have to worry too much because it only happens in, 7 whole frames. So let's see what this looks like if we make that a crazy blood effect instead. So if we go over here to effects and presets and go hue saturation, let's change this dirt charge into something other than dirt. Let's make it just really deep red blood and guts instead. And then I'm going to see about maybe throwing that underneath the saber effects. Well, this is tricky because no, it should be okay. Let's see what happens. Nope, I'm going to throw it over. I want it over Bad Meredith Dies. I might split this into 2 pieces, like do a couple frames where this is more like overlaid or soft light, or
I don't know what those mixing things do. Like,
so they kind of work in sections, right? So like these ones take black and push it to the image, right? These ones take black and push it to the image. So if I set this to multiply, everything gets darker, right? Screen removes any white, right? So like if you if you have something that's really bright in the image and you want the dark areas to show up, screen will make the dark. Wait, hold on. Let me think about this for 2 seconds.
screen got rid of the black.
Yes, screen gets rid of the black.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Multiply gets rid of the white. And then like these ones are basically additive blending modes, and then some of these are additive, some of them are subtractive, and they kind of go section by section. So where they're sectioned out, different sections work on different types of color or luminosity or whatever. Not the best explanation ever, but close enough. Yeah, this is kind of tricky. I almost want this to be like 3 pieces. I want it to be like this starts, this ends, so that it looks like the light's actually going through it. And it looks to me like these pieces need to be placed a little bit better.
I hope things like shut down.
What?
Must crash.
Oh, that sucks. Everybody say a bit for Charles and his crashed computer. Sorry, Charles.
Rest in peace, Charles.
Rest in pieces.
Pour some out for me.
Rest in peace.
All right, I'm gonna look at this in real time and see what this looks like. Just for funsies. Here we go. All right, we need to just work the edges of that mask a little bit.
You just like blur the bottom.
For the little explosion effect that I used.
Little dust.
Yeah, I added a little bit of I added a mask in there. So there is a mask there. So you can see that mask.
Yeah.
And then I think what I need to do is I need to kind of like work it a little better. So I think what I'm going to do is add a secondary mask to this and kind of like come in here and make it look like tendrils or whatever, almost like fire. And then what I'm going to do is take the whole thing and kind of like use this to break up the edge a little bit. And then feather that out. I just want to kind of lose that really harsh line that I have. That's better. Yeah, that way it almost looks like her shirt's tearing right there a little bit. So you go, and remember, this is like 3 frames, so you don't have to be super duper perfect. And I mean, the other thing I kind of want to do is add like a glowy hole right there. And I think we might be able to do some retiming here too to kind of make this explosion happen a little quicker. So like if I go time, enable timer mapping, I'm going to go ahead and set some keyframes for the times that I have. And then I'm just going to whoa, it moves a lot. Kind of go like that so that it happens really quickly. Check this again, watch it in real time. That's pretty effective. Maybe add some sparks there too, because you know that's what plasma does when it hits a body, is it explodes. Like right here where we have that initial bit of blood happening. Probably need to fix that. I'm just going to delete that layer. I don't think we need it. And then I'm going to copy this mask, paste it there so it breaks that edge up a little bit, and then I'm going to do the same thing I did with this one, feather this out a little bit more so it's a softer edge. You know, other things that we could do is we could like distort that back area, make it look like it's punching out. Like get in there and ripple it a little bit or distort it. We've got, you know, Bad Meredith dies right here. We've got this all masked out. So if we solo this, you know, we could almost do like let's see if this works actually. What the heck's it called? Well, let's try bulge and see what happens if we put bulge on here. It might be one of those things where it's a masked effect, so it might be something we need to like do on its own. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things you need to do on its own.
Would Ripple be the same thing too? Or?
Yeah, Ripple would kind of do. I think what I want to do is I want to do that distort. What the heck is it called again? now I'm forgetting what the heck it's called. Mesh warp, that one. I don't know if this actually works for. I'm basically just gonna like up the rows and columns until I can get a little section where I want it. Like right there. See, you could animate that and that, so it would kind of look like it's distorting a little bit. So like there we go, we've got that. So if we go in here and we add distortion mesh keyframe, I'm gonna unsolo this so I can actually see where it starts to hit. Okay, I'm gonna go back a frame. So we got this nice distortion mesh keyframe going on. So click on that, and then we've got our distortion mesh keyframe, which is right here. And then we're gonna take that distortion mesh, move it forward a few frames, and then we're gonna have proper distortion happen. So I'm basically just gonna take some of these little bits here and make this kind of distort out a little bit. What on earth is happening right now? It's got that hard line on it. This is probably not the best way to do this. I'm just trying to add some fun detail to it. If I were to really do it right, I'd go in there and like make a separate layer and have it all work independently. I'm just gonna lose the mesh warp for right now. I'm gonna see if I can kind of help this out a little bit more with some additional, like, muddy it up a little bit so there's more stuff happening, and it will kind of hide that edge a little bit more. So like one of the things I want to do is I want to add some sparks in here. So I know there's a whole bunch of sparks in this pack, so we're gonna go ahead and pull in all the sparks. And this will come in really handy for when she explodes too. We could use some of these sparks when she explodes. Sparks make everything look better. And you notice they're doing that a lot more in video games now too. Like tons of particle effects, like Horizon Zero Dawn, sparks everywhere. Every time you shoot anything or something explodes, sparks fly everywhere.
That fog that happens in some games where it comes from vents, that's particles too.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the frame rates go so low.
I think, what was it, that, which director does the, Transformer movies?
Oh, Michael Bay.
Michael Bay. There's always, sparks in anything that he does.
Yeah, they just make stuff look more realistic.
Sparks, explosions.
I want to just have like maybe a firecracker will work. Just yeah, like a little pop. See that? Like that'll be perfect for adding some. Yes. Is there a smaller one? Yes. Okay. So here we go. We're going to start adding some of this stuff in here too. So we've got our dirt charges in there. Let's go ahead and add a firecracker in here too. So you got our firecracker right there. So let's just watch this real quick so we can see what this does. Bring this over here so we can actually see it. Alright, there it is right there. Okay, so the firecracker basically happens straight away. So one thing I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to move the anchor point right to where the base of that firecracker is. So if I have to do any rotating or anything like that. So I'm basically going to start that spark effect right when we start to see that first hit of blood right there. So I'm going to get this up right here, rotate it a little bit more, like so. And then let's make this a screened effect. Boom. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Sparks for the win. All right, so the other thing that we got to do here is we got to just blur these a little bit. She's out of focus, so our sparks need to be out of focus too. Beautiful. Boom. Yeah, that's starting to look punchy. Okay, let's go back and check our real-time view. Yep, 7 frames, folks. But it's helping to sell it. You know, we'll do the same thing on the explosion too. Cool. You guys want to take a break?
Yeah.
Let's take a break. So we're recording now. All right. So, things that make visual effects look realistic. We said reflections. So if you have something like this firing, you should see the reflection of it. We see the reflection in the specular highlight on the floor right here, and we see this specular highlight on the wall as well. And I almost feel like, I don't know if this, it feels like this should be up a little higher over here, but I can't really tell if that's gonna work the way that I'm hoping it works. We'll see. We'll go for it and see what it feels like. So fortunately, because we've got all this laid out already, this should be pretty simple to make work. So I duplicated the saber layer and moved the start and the endpoints over, and then all we're really going to do here is I'm just going to try a directional blur. Directional blur, and we're going to throw that on our saber layer. And we're gonna set the blur is gonna go kind of like 5 degrees, it looks like, and we're just gonna really blur the crap out of this thing. There we go. And then let's try a different blending mode. Whoa, definitely not that. And then let's also just play with the opacity a little bit. So now it's subtle, right? So it's there, and if we watch this in real time, it should help sell the effect a whole lot better. Only a few frames, but it's there. All right, and then let's do the same thing on the floor. So let's take another duplicate, and we should probably name these layers too. So I'm going to call this Saber Wall Reflection. And then I'm going to call Saber Main Blast, and then we've got some additional little saber effects here. I'm going to call this one Saber Smoke Trail, and then we're going to call this one, which is the gun starting to glow at the beginning, I'm going to call this Saber Gun Glow. There we go. We've got all of our sabers kind of going, which is good. Cool. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing on the floor. So let's go ahead and take our saber wall reflection, and we will duplicate our saber again, and then this time we're going to go and put this endpoint kind of down here on the wall, and then we're going to change our directional blur so that it's more sideways, running parallel with the floor. And a little bit more work here on the core start and end. Move this over just a little bit. And I almost feel like going to try to blur this. I'm going to really draw this blur out quite a bit. And I'm going to take the end, scoot it over this direction a little bit. So if we were getting super nitty-gritty picky about the saber reflection, we would add some texture to it too, and maybe some specular highlights. Because this is only 7 frames, I'm going to keep it relatively simple. But it's starting to really work. And I think lastly what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a really, really subtle one up there on the ceiling too. So I'm going to call this one floor. That should be probably floor reflection. So we're going to duplicate this one more time, do the same song and dance. We're going to take the start point, and then this time it's going to go kind of up here on the ceiling, and then we're going to take the end point, and it's going to kind of go like somewhere over here. And we're going to make this super subtle, so I'm going to bring this down to like 20% opacity. So there we go. We've got reflections kind of working on every surface. I'm going to like double the blur length on this thing so that it really is super duper subtle. If I could go in and do all the little specular highlights on like the metal surfaces and stuff like that of the like the little, what's the word I'm looking for, shelves back there, I would do that too. So a few other things that we can do to just add a little bit of add a little pizzazz to this is we can do a flare to this too. We did a flare to the blast bolt in the previous version of this deal, so I think I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go layer, new, solid. Let's add in black solid here. Let's go ahead and call this flare. Click OK. And then we can go ahead and add flare, lens flare to this. This is one of those effects that I don't use very often because it looks super canned and hokey. We're gonna blur this thing pretty heavily. So let's go fast blur this. Fast blur this thing. We're gonna repeat the edge pixels and we're just gonna soften this up quite a bit. And then we're gonna set this to screen.
How do you get it on its own layer? Is that a
Just a layer. I added a new layer solid, a new black layer solid. It actually needs to be black. And then for this, I just want this to kind of follow the. That actually looks pretty cool right there. I kind of want this to just follow the main core of this bolt. So I'm going to animate this to kind of go with the saber. We've got this set to screen right now. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use hue saturation and I'm going to colorize this to kind of match the rest of the bolt. Or it might be fun to like do an opposite color, like maybe go more orange or yellow. Push the sats a little bit. That's kind of neat. Alright, and then what we'll do is I'm going to back this off just a little bit. I want the core to be the brightest thing, so it's just going to be a little. I backed it off 10% to 90% opacity. And now what we'll do is we will animate the flare center. So we've got our flare there. I'm basically just going to go frame by frame. In all actuality, this thing should probably like disappear for a second when it goes behind her body and then punch through like over here. And then it probably needs to go away like on the next frame. So it's gonna go let's see, we'll pull the brightness down just a little bit too. Brightness is down a little bit. I'm gonna move this first core thing just a little bit. There we go. And get rid of this last keyframe, and I'm basically going to cut it off after three keyframes, so this is going to be a really quick. Third keyframe is going to be right there. Looks good. Helps sell the like brightness off of the lens, which is good. If I had something like optical flares from Video Copilot, I would probably use that. Another place this could come in handy is kind of right here. You could add a little lens flare over the top of this thing, so let's do that. I'm going to duplicate this flare layer, kind of take this flare, shut off the animation, move the flare center over here. Actually, I'll just take the position information that I made from the gun glow, moving around. That's the color. Well, it doesn't even work on the same coordinate system, so we're going to skip that. At least I don't think it does. Maybe it does. Let's see, shall we? I'm going to scoot this up a little bit so I can see more of my layers. So let's see, if we are on the lens flare and I want that to be right there. Oh, it looks like it is on the same coordinate system. Sweet. So I can take these coordinates, or these keyframes right there, copy those, come over here, get into my flare, get onto the flare center, and then I should be able to paste those, and they will follow exactly what I have for the previous effect. So the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to animate the flare brightness over time. So I want this to start out at like practically nothing, 20%, and then as this starts to get brighter, we'll have this come up to like 100. That helps sell it a little bit more too. Anything to help sell this. So other things that I would do to the gun explosion thing is maybe add some sparks here too. So we've got sparks in there. Let's find another spark effect that'll work. Number 3 looks pretty good. It's a nice high energy spark effect, so let's throw that in over the top. Why not? Since we're doing all this crazy spark work. So as soon as that hits right there, take this and we will screen this over the top. Helps to add a little bit of detail. I mean, obviously we shouldn't see the sparks, shouldn't be in focus, so let's throw them out of focus a little bit. This is one of those things that's going to just be really subtle for just a couple of frames. And then we cut that off right there. I thought it was going to play a little bit more than that, but I guess I was wrong. It's just that first frame you really see it on. What happens if we pull the blur back a little bit? Oh, there we... Oh, there's... It kind of plays a little bit. Pull the blur back just a little bit. Cool. Okay, sweet. So we've got reflections, we've got some sparks going on right here. Added a little lens flare in there to help sell the light a little bit, which I think it does well. I might even push this flare just a little hotter. Let it get really bright there. Kablooey. All right, that's looking pretty good. So we've added reflections, we've done flares, we've done sparks, we've done some blood with that dirt and debris, which looks really cool. What other things could we do to this to help it look more realistic? So a couple little things that I've noticed just in this shot in general. I feel like the plumes of light back here might be a little bit on the sharp side. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do with these shock waves is kind of add a little bit of a box blur to those guys too, and just blur it a couple of pixels on each of those shock waves. Otherwise they just look too pasted on. And the other thing that you could do to these is you could add grain. You'll notice that there is grain in the video. So, and this goes with like all these overlaid effects. Like if you put grain on this stuff, it's gonna help sell it so much better than if it doesn't have grain. Grain will vastly increase your render times. So if I'm gonna do like adding grain, I'll just go in and say add grain, and let's do it to our main Saber Blast real quick to see what kind of a effect that we can get on our main Saber Blast. So I'm going to solo this so that we can see it. So you'll see right here it gives you kind of a preview box of the grain. So that right away is going to help bury that effect in the footage. It's going to help make it look more realistic, right? So let's unsolo this.
Like you've actually filmed.
Like it was actually shot. Exactly, right? So like here's with the grain, and I'm zoomed in quite a bit here, but here's with the grain on, here's with the grain off. See how it just adds that kind of realism? And that's not actually just affecting the Saber itself. So what I would probably do here, and hopefully this doesn't muck everything up, is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to add a little mask around kind of the main Saber core thing so that we don't have grain where we don't need grain. That's still adding it outside. Huh. Well, I suppose we could just add grain to the whole shot. Won't kill it. It's already got some grain to it. Not the end of the world if we add a little grain to the whole thing. So that'll help sell your effects too, doing things like film grain, to make it feel a little bit more realistic is gonna help. If we're doing this to the whole shot, we should. I'm gonna get rid of this mask because it obviously doesn't matter, and then I'm gonna cut this out. If we're doing this to the whole shot, what we should do is add a new we'll add a new adjustment layer. Take this all the way up to the top and paste the grain on top of it. And now it adds just that subtle bit of film grain to the whole thing. And you can fine tune your film grain too. Like they've got a bunch of pre-built film grains, so you can pick different film grains. You can see that it takes a long time to process one frame.
Yeah, mine just crashed.
So that's one thing you want to be careful about with film grain is you number one, you want to make sure that if you add it to one shot, you add it to all the shots. And number two, you want to just be really careful with it because I'm rendering this at full res. Yeah, and you can really see that's super grainy. I almost like just the none setting. It's a little more subtle. And then you can pull the intensity back too. Like, we'll pull the intensity back quite a bit here. There we go. It's better. So that, again, is one of those little tricks that will help sell your effect much better. I'm actually just going to take this adjustment layer and cut it from here and then paste it in over the entire sequence so that it all has this film grain to it. And then let's see, this is rendering at quarter res. Quarter res is not too bad. Let's see what happens when we go. Wow, that's 50%. Let's go full res and see what it takes to render one frame at full res. Still going.
It might crash it.
Yeah, mine does.
I just saved it like a couple seconds ago, so even if it crashes, it's not the end of the world. This could also be another thing that you just reserve for color grading. Like, you don't have to do this process right now. Like, you could set up your effects, do all this stuff, and then when you do your color grade, that's when you could add your grain. Yeah, there it goes. Boom. 2.3 gigabytes at 32 bits per channel.
Holy. Ooh.
So it did not want to.
Would it be better if you exported out the video then added the grain to it?
You could absolutely do that, yes. So I'm just going to shut that off. And then I'm going to purge my cache. If it'll do it. Yes. Oh yeah, my cache was full too, so that probably didn't help. And then we're just about to wrap up here, but that was pretty much our day. We got to make some lasers and some reflections and some smoke trails and some blood splattering and some sparks and a little bit of rotoscoping, a whole bunch of cool stuff. All right, so let's just take one last look at the kind of full effect right now. And again, this is still what I would consider this to be a rough as of yet. Because there's a lot more things we need to do. We need to make the proper laser beam for the actual... What is going on here? Image buffer size, 32-bit. Why is it 16,470 by... What the heck?
Adobe, why do you stink?
For real, dude. Quarter res. Let's go in here. Preferences, media disk cache. Clean this database. Shouldn't take long because I just cleaned it at the beginning of class. There's
Sure,
nothing.
leave now?
Yeah, it's good, Riley. Go for it, buddy.
I tried that too.
Work on this shot for next week. Make cool lasers. Make things explode.
I want guns with lasers.
Guns with lasers, buddy. Click OK. Now will this render is the question. There we go. Sweet. So we need to fix that part right there. It gets to this frame and then chokes for whatever reason. Too much motion blur, too many particles, too many layers, too much stuff. We just killed it. We killed After Effects, folks.
Smoke just starts coming out of my
I know that everybody watching this just loves to wait for renders like me. I should have paused it and then played it when it got to the end. Come on, you can do it. I believe in you, computer. You have 2 video cards and 64 gigs of RAM. You should be able to make this happen. There we go. Full effect right here, relatively full. There's still a whole bunch of work that I want to do on this. Like, I want to get realistic looking blood splatter on the wall with like drips. I want to get like an arm to fly off. I want to kind of do that District 9 kind of piff look to it. We got to put the right laser blast in there to kind of like basically just start the shot with the blast going right through her, some sparks coming out. But this is looking pretty convincing. You know, when you look at the original footage and you see what we've done, this works really, really well. Helps sell the whole effect. It also saves our butts because earlier in the program, DW is getting wrestled by an evil Meredith, and Meredith's got her little hand cannon, and she says that she doesn't have a clear shot, but the chick's like 6 feet away from her in front of her, and I know people are going to be like, oh, why isn't she shooting? She could totally blast that guy. And then when she comes around the corner and blows herself up, people are going to be like, oh, that's why she didn't do it. And thus ends our tutorial.
The power of that gun reminds